Reclaiming Timeless Ways, another episode underway. Glad to have you along with us. Mike Traster, Simon Fuller, welcome aboard. And Mike, all aboard.
All aboard. This one is no question marks. It's called Redefining Ourselves. And there's a whole bunch of circumstances during which that happens or should happen, needs to happen.
Okay.
So the first one is after an illness. So somebody gets sick. They have a part of their body that needs to be altered surgically or by chemotherapy or radiation or because of, some circumstance, and they don't have the physical strength or coordination or physical symmetry, whatever. Somebody is a model, and they don't have a perfect looking body anymore because something was cut out of them.
Right.
What do they do?
Right.
Do they say, I was perfect and now I'm ugly, so I'm dead? I no longer exist.
Right.
Well, then we get back to the other message. Is that message delivered from light or darkness?
Right.
So identify the source.
Right.
Identify the source, right? If that's from light, then look at it and say, oh, is there an opportunity here for something?
Yeah.
Or do I have to adapt? Am I allowed to grieve? Not only are you allowed to, you must grieve.
Yeah.
If you suffer a loss, if you lose some of your energy, somebody has a heart attack and their cardiac output is diminished by 10% forever or whatever. Is that something they will grieve? Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's fair.
It's their power and it's their freedom. And it might be a thing of pride because they worked hard for it, or they were just given a gift.
Right.
Now they have less. Should they grieve? They better grieve.
Yeah.
If they don't grieve, it's suppressed.
Yeah.
And if it's suppressed, it's going to eat them up.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to just be bitter and lost.
It will come out in an unhealthy way,
It will.
typically.
It will. So after illness, after injury, same thing. You fall down. Somebody is a world-class weightlifter or a great runner or whatever, gymnast, and they fall. I knew a gymnast once who fell off a trampoline, broke his neck. He recovered, but he had to have some fairly radical reconstructive surgery, so he was less mobile because he had like 3 or 4 cervical vertebrae fused. So he couldn't do this. He won a state championship at 15 in high school, which is unheard of, right? Beat everybody in New York State in his piece of apparatus. It was just, I would say, heading for the Olympics and going to be a big boy there as well, And then he had this terrible accident, and he adapted, and he's still an active person many years later. Took a lot of willpower, because he didn't only focus, he looked at what he lost. Right. And I think what he said to himself is, I was very gifted, I had incredible strength, balance, agility, proprioception, knowing where you are in space as you're moving around. And I also did a lot of work.
Right.
So if I did, and without the work, all those things would not have come together.
Right.
So what do I still like that I can still do?
Right.
Last I heard, he was climbing mountains,
Right.
So he reapplied his ability to focus and work and found joy elsewhere.
Right.
Is it the same? I don't know. But it's not nothing. He's not in the abyss of hopelessness.
Right.
So I'm sure he looked at that message of, well, you're screwed. You're not going to be the best gymnast anymore. So now you're nothing. I'm sure he looked at that message and said, no, that's not it.
Right.
I'm still okay. I'm just going to find how I'm okay.
Yeah.
So part of the initial phase when we have to redefine ourselves is shock. Yeah. Parent loses a young child. They go through shock, right? They were devoted to this kid, and it was like the whole center of their being, kind of worshiped this little person in a healthy way.
Right.
And now they're not there. What do? They feel hopeless for a while. And it's like, do you want to fix them immediately?
You can't.
You can't. You can't. You shouldn't, and you can't. They must experience some of that before they re-experience hope and purpose elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right? So injury, illness, shock, loss, divorce. If a person is married and they look up to their spouse like they won the lottery, they're looking up to their spouse, not across in an admiring but equal way, then they're going to feel like that spouse defined them. And then they're screwed, right? So they're going to have to look back and go, wait a minute, was I looking at them imperfectly? Were they did I see something in them that was wonderful that I'm grieving losing? Did I imagine more than was there? You have to sort that out.
Right.
Whoever that is and whatever their circumstances. And then, is that the only chance? If you're waiting for a bus and you miss a bus, is that the last bus
Right.
in the history of the world? Is that the last can of soup that you'll ever see in a store? Not that a person is a can of soup, but just as an analogy. What about a loss of career? Let's say there was a fella, I don't remember what he did precisely, but he had a background in math and physics, and he did marketing work in the fish industry,
Okay.
right? And he was like pushing 60. And one day, this big company he worked for let him go. I don't know why. He was no longer employable in his field because he was too old. So people would look at him and go, we're going to get 3 or 4 years out of this guy and he's going to retire. We're going to invest all this money in getting him on board with our business and our way of doing things. And then we're going to have to retrain somebody. So we're going to politely tell him that he's in the running. And we're sorry, but somebody else fit better.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened to this guy. I was not able to help him. But he needed to get out of that field.
And either way, whether or not you could help him, Mike, by sharing the story, maybe we're helping somebody.
Right.
The irony is a lot of us will lose a job in our lifetime.
Oh,
or have
absolutely.
already lost a job in our lifetime,
Sure.
and it doesn't define you.
No. Loss of purpose. So you might lose your job, but not necessarily lose your career. Or,
Sure.
what would happen if a doctor suffered an injury to their arm and they were a surgeon?
Right.
And they weren't steady anymore, so this became that, They're a neurosurgeon. They're not a neurosurgeon anymore.
Right.
They might teach.
Right.
They might teach damn well.
Right.
They might teach better than they ever could have.
Right.
Ooh, why? Because they can slow the movie down and they can go back and go, ooh, you know what? Let's take another 3 minutes and look at this closer and do it better.
Right.
Let's not do a good job or an adequate job. Let's do a superb job, So, or maybe they're going to teach in a classroom, not clinically, or
Right.
both,
Right.
Or maybe they'll teach neurology, to somebody who's not a medical student. I don't know. The question is, are you pulling your scope in such a refined way that you're pushing everything else out of your field of view? And the answer you get from people is, this is the only thing I ever wanted. So the only thing I ever wanted becomes God. You're being told to shut up because that's it. And what they want to do is they want to be parented, and they want someone to listen to them until it magically fixes itself, which it won't. Right? So they need to go through their grief and their anger, You know, a guy falls off a motorcycle or a horse or whatever, and doesn't have the coordination or the visual focus, whatever it is. So you go through that sense of loss, which you will. You will always feel some of that because it's what happens, part of your history.
You lost something.
Right. You did lose it. It's
Right.
real. The loss doesn't stop being a loss.
Right.
But there are new doors that come along.
Right.
So maybe on day one, the loss is this big, right? And on day two, it's not going to change.
Right.
But on day 100, it might be that, and on day 500, it might be that. That's a lot.
Right.
But it's not that, right? So you're starting to reframe your emotional view.
Yeah, you hear some of those phrases like, but I'm going to say it, and it sounds cliche, but it is very real when you apply it to like our discussion today, and that is,
Right.
you are not defined by an event in your life, a circumstance.
No.
You are defined by the collective body of work in your life.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Earlier you mentioned, I was literally thinking in my head as you said, if you fall off a horse or motorcycle, I was literally thinking the moral is get back on the horse.
Yeah.
In a sense, it might be a different horse.
Right.
But ultimately, Mike, I like some of these examples because these things have, I'm sure, happened to many of our audience. And they are real losses, as you said, and they should be grieved. And
Yes.
you have every right to be upset. What's the next step?
Right.
And that's sometimes where we can get lost. We let that spiral us down.
Right. It's like, no, that was the only thing I wanted, and then you pitch a shit fit because that's the only thing I wanted, so shut the F up. I don't want to talk about it. I wanted that and nothing else. This.
Right.
It's being taken away from me, then I have nothing. Right now I'm in a pure victim role.
Right.
And I'm looking for a parent magician.
Right.
But there are no parent magicians. There are none. Zero.
Yeah.
My magical grandpa can't come back and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mikey. Yeah, you're so wonderful. We'll give it back to you." Can't do it.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. Am I making fun of people that go through loss? Hell no. I've been through a lot of personal loss, a lot. From illness, from divorce, from a car wreck, a second car wreck. I understand. Betrayal. Right, so we have a betrayal in a relationship, a betrayal of a friend. Somebody defames us, for whatever reason. They didn't get what they wanted, so they get, mean,
Yeah.
just really destructive. And I had somebody look me up once and tell me that they had heard things about me in a party decades earlier. And they were always horrified at having heard that. And they wanted to know if any of those things were true. And I was so horrified and disgusted. It was almost too absurd initially to get angry. But when I realized the source, I was like, oh, that person did that many times, and they had a profit motive, right? And if you're being defamed, you might not be able to fight it directly, but I think the worst thing you can do is to defend yourself too much. And the reason why is the more you defend yourself, the more you look guilty. You're compensating too much. It's like you're desperate. And you're almost feeding that other person's fire.
Well, and you're keeping the story alive.
You are. You are. And I think a good response is, look, you say, you know what? How many times did you ever see me socially? How many times did you ever see me with friends or out on the road and just meet by coincidence? Did you ever see me act that way? Once. Ever. Did you? Do you know anybody who you know to be truthful?
Right.
Not the source of this defamation,
Right.
but somebody you honestly trust, whose substance you know and respect, who has ever said that they saw me in that kind of a circumstance? Oh, no. What does that mean to you? if it was being spoken about you, would you want people to just accept it
Right.
or to test it
Right.
vigorously, you know? And so you question it's an old friend, and they're like horrified. They don't want to believe it, but you're like, your reputation is like a white T-shirt.
Yeah.
If you throw tomato juice on it, it's stained, right? And you look at them and you go, you know, time is going to take this stain out, but it's never going to be perfect. Somebody has done something malicious that I can't fight. I don't have a time machine. Imagine if that happened to you. How would you feel? Put them in your shoes,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah, say to them, imagine if this was done to you. How would you feel?
Yeah.
Would you have any respect for the same person if they did it to you instead of me?
Right.
Well, hell no. Oh, really?
Right.
Well, maybe you should feel some moral indignation for my plight instead of mistrust, since
Right.
you don't have evidence. And the reason why you don't have, see, the guilty person says, I dare you to find the proof. The innocent person says, you can't find proof of what never happened,
Right.
right? There is no evidence of that which never took place,
Right.
right? So that's the response. Bankruptcy, well, that's a rough road,
Yeah.
you know? You spend too much money, you make an investment that doesn't pan out, an industry takes a crap
Yeah.
because of changes in the economy, you know. You get an education that's not marketable, and now you're in debt for 40 or 50 grand or more, you know. So you have to live very simply. You get rid of your debt through a bankruptcy process, but now your financial wherewithal and reputation are diminished.
Right.
Going to be for a couple of years,
Right.
right? You have to reconstruct yourself. So one thing that I've heard several financial teachers talk about is they break 100 into 4 parts. They call it 70, 10, 10, 10.
Okay.
And it's like, this is what we call stupid simple. It's so simple it would be stupid to not do it.
Sure.
Right? So what's 70? Those are your basic bills. Every month you take 70% of your net and you apply them to your rent, your insurance, your gas, your car repairs, you know, the basics.
Right.
The recurring steady bills. 10% savings, 10% giving, 10% enjoyment.
Yeah.
70, 10, 10, 10. Now, are you going to have to adjust those a little in the beginning? Probably.
Right.
You know, when you recreate yourself. But that basic formula seems to get people out of helplessness.
Yeah.
And it's people say, you know what, that's too simple, that's stupid. Well, these are people that have been doing financial counseling like Mount Vesuvius power and success
Sure.
for decades, and they're saying, no, it takes a decision. And I heard somebody talking about positive thinking, and they said something interesting. They said it's more important to decide, in some respects, what you're going to not do than what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. So if they might say, well, you know, cigarettes cost me $5 a day, or 6 or 7. That's $150, $200 a month. Maybe I need to figure out how to not smoke.
Right.
And I've just undamaged my finances by 10 or 15%.
Right.
I don't need alcohol. I want it, maybe, but I don't need it.
Right.
Well, maybe right there you've got 15% of your problems solved.
Right.
Wow. Loss of a loved one. When you love somebody, one of the things that you do is you become, in a constructive sense, the servant to that person.
Sure. Sure.
Your time is devoted to them, but you're not aware of that consciously. You just do it.
Right.
It's your cadence.
Right.
It's written into your being. So you have to consciously look at it and say, why do I feel empty now? It's 2 in the, oh, I feel empty now because this was when I always brought them to their appointment.
Right.
Now I don't have that purpose. When you identify it, then you have to decide which conduit you're going to follow. The conduit that says, oh, I don't have that purpose and I love that purpose, I'm screwed, or I don't have that purpose. I need to acknowledge that that's the source of my sadness, right? That's the source of why I feel empty. So I need to move from that and find something meaningful or enjoyable. Maybe I'm going to play video games for 20 minutes. If I enjoy that,
Right.
as a time patch between now and whenever.
Right.
Or is it okay to just play video games for 20 minutes? I would say yes.
Yeah.
20 hours? Probably not.
Right.
Moving. Let's say the area that you live in is no good for you for whatever prospects you're looking for. Work, relationships, the culture. Are you a fit in that culture or not? You know, education. Maybe the air is not healthy for you to breathe.
Yeah.
You know, it's unhealthy air, and you're asthmatic or whatever. So you have to move, which means you have to adapt. And so with that, I describe it as like, and again, this is the 10 game. It doesn't have to be 10. But basically, it's the 5 ins and the 5 outs, or the 5 things I most need to have, and the 5 things I most need to stay away from. Mm-hmm. So let's say I need a moderate climate and low crime. That's 2. That's 1/5 of my page.
Right.
Right. I need an affordable environment, but I need an environment that's not impoverished. That's 4. We're 40% done with the list. Right? So you write down your list, 5 must-haves, 5 must-not-haves. And pollen, you know, are you comfortable around high pollen, or are you prone to severe allergies?
Right.
You know? So you get your little list. Do I want to live in a town of 500 or 500,000? Right? And you make your decision. Mm-hmm. And then you start connecting with people. So one thing I would say is, if you're doing this, citydata.com is an amazing research organization on the internet, city-data.com, for researching places. You want to talk about demographics, incredible.
Yeah, I've even used it in my line of business.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I thought I saw a pretty strong nod there.
Yeah, good. It's got great information.
It does.
Yeah.
If you can figure, if you're a genius, and you can decipher the indecipherable, what is it, the U.S. Census.gov?
Yeah.
I've never been able to figure out how to get through it. It's not user friendly.
Yeah.
At least not for me.
Yeah.
Is it for you?
There's pieces,
Okay.
but yes.
Right. Sperlings is another one. Sperlings.
Not familiar with that one.
Okay, they're another one. Good source. You know, so you look at these things, or politics. I want to be in a moderate environment. I want to be in a liberal environment. I want to be in a conservative, without putting value judgments on any of them. Right.
Right.
I do want to be in a liberal environment. I don't want to be in a conservative environment, or vice versa. Right.
Right.
I want to be in a farming community. I want to be in a manufacturing community.
Right.
Is it right or wrong? Is it right or wrong for you?
Yeah. Right.
Whoever else has an opinion, you might want to listen to it for some reason. But, you know, like maybe you don't want to live in Gary, Indiana because of crime or pollution. Right? Oh, okay, I hadn't thought of that, you know?
Right.
So, Sperlings, U.S. Census.gov, City Data, any of those fantastic resources for somebody that's.
Yeah.
Then what you do is you start making connections, and like a good way to make a connection is you call somebody up, you ask them for permission to talk for 5 or 10 minutes, right? Maybe somebody that owns an insurance agency,
Right.
or a shoe store,
Right.
right? You talk for 5 or 10 minutes, you send them a card Thanks, it was nice visiting with you. Glad to get to know you. If I moved there, I'm gonna come say hi.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? Then you call them again a month later, and you go, you're still on my list. My list is narrowed from 100 to 6.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking more oh, great, man, if you come, I sure would like to visit you. Buy them lunch if you show up.
Right.
What's happening? You have a friend,
Right.
right? And maybe you'll make a friend through them.
Right.
Connection of some sort. Find a place to live, a good mechanic instead of a crook.
Right.
Right? And so all these things are redefining ourselves and adapting to change.
Yeah.
And that's that.
Which is guaranteed those things are going to happen. So some great tips and information today, Mike. Appreciate you sharing.
Thank you.
Hopefully you were able to extract some good, and we always encourage you to share that out so others can hopefully take a nugget or maybe a whole plateful of good information from our Reclaiming Timeless Ways shows. Again, until next time, we look forward to chatting again, Mike. We thank you so much and wish you a wonderful day.
Take care.